Star Trek, Primitive Passengers Season 6, Episode 7, The Exchange. The sleek silhouette of the USS Endeavor sliced through the star-studded blackness of space, its nacelles pulsing with a soft blue glow. On the bridge, Captain Amelia Rodriguez leaned forward in her chair, her dark eyes scanning the main view screen with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. "Status report, Commander Toral," she said, her voice carrying the crisp authority of a seasoned Starfleet officer. The half-Klingon first officer turned from her station, her ridged forehead furrowing slightly. "All systems nominal, Captain. We're on course to rendezvous with the shuttle carrying our guests?" Rodriguez nodded, noting the hesitation in Toral's voice. The impending arrival of the non-Earth origin humans, or NEOHs, had the entire crew on edge. It wasn't every day that a Starfleet vessel played host to members of Nolan Mercer's mysterious empire. "Shuttle approaching, Captain," the young ensign at tactical announced, his voice cracking slightly with nervousness. "Very well," Rodriguez replied, standing and tugging her uniform jacket straight. "Commander Toral, you have the bridge. I'll greet our guests in the shuttle bay." As the turbolift doors hissed shut behind her, Rodriguez allowed herself a moment of reflection. Admiral Janeway's olive branch to Mercer was bold, perhaps even reckless. But if it fostered understanding between Starfleet and the NEOs, the risk might be worth it. The shuttle bay thrummed with activity as the sleek craft glided through the force field. Rodriguez stood at attention, flanked by an honor guard of cadets. As the shuttle's hatch opened with a pneumatic hiss, she squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges this cultural exchange might bring. The first figure to emerge was unmistakably the NEO leader, Buff. His imposing physique and easy grin seemed at odds with the sterile environment of the shuttle bay. Following him were three others: a petite woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, a wiry man whose gaze darted about, assessing every detail of his surroundings, and another woman, her posture radiating confidence. "Welcome aboard the USS Endeavor," Rodriguez said, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. "I'm Captain Amelia Rodriguez." Buff clasped her hand firmly, his grip strong but not challenging. "Pleased to meet you, Captain. I'm Buff, Buffalo Tony, and these are my colleagues, Sarah Firenze, Mark Odessa, and Lisa Meridian." As the NEOs moved to shake hands with the cadets, Rodriguez couldn't help but notice the contrast between the visitors' basic work attire and the crisp Starfleet uniforms. As Lisa approached the captain directly with a mouth full of questions, Buff simply glanced at her, and she diverted herself to introductions with the cadets. Rodriguez noted that command and authority were evident, even if practiced in more subtle tones. One cadet in particular, a tall young man with sandy hair, seemed captivated by Sarah, his handshake lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Cadet Connor," Rodriguez called out, "why don't you show our guests to their quarters?" "Aye, Captain," Connor replied, snapping to attention before turning to the NEOs with a warm smile. "If you'll follow me, I'll give you a quick tour of the ship on our way." As the group filed out of the shuttle bay, Rodriguez caught Buff's eye. The NEO leader gave her a knowing wink, as if to say, "This should be interesting." Rodriguez couldn't have agreed more. As she made her way back to the bridge, she knew that the next few days would test not only the NEOs' ability to adapt to Starfleet protocols, but also her crew's capacity for understanding and acceptance. The true mission of the Endeavor, it seemed, had only just begun. As the turbolift doors slid open, Rodriguez stepped onto the bridge, her mind still processing the unconventional first encounter with the NEOs. Commander Toral raised an inquisitive eyebrow, silently asking for an assessment. "At ease, Commander," Rodriguez said, settling into her captain's chair. "Our guests are not quite what I expected." Toral's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "By all means, Captain. Please elaborate." Rodriguez leaned in, lowering her voice. "Let's just say that Starfleet Academy didn't prepare us for this level of informality. Keep an eye on them, Toral. I have a feeling this mission might be more challenging than we anticipated." Meanwhile, Cadet James Connor led the NEOs through the corridors of the Endeavor, his practiced tour guide spiel faltering each time he caught Sarah Ferenze's big, dazzling green eyes. The other cadets in their group exchanged knowing glances, amused by their colleagues' obvious infatuation. Lisa Meridian laughed out loud, as if everyone was in on the joke. "And here we have the ship's mess hall," Connor said, gesturing to a set of double doors. "It's equipped with replicators, but we also have a galley for preparing fresh meals when—" "Fresh meals?" Buff interrupted, his eyes lighting up. "Now you're speaking our language, Cadet. Any chance we could get a look at the galley?" Connor hesitated, glancing at his fellow cadets. "Well, it's not typically part of the tour, but I suppose." "Aw, come on," Lisa Meridian chimed in, her easy smile infectious. "We promise not to break anything. Scout's honor." She held up 3 fingers in what was clearly meant to be a salute, but bore little resemblance to any Starfleet gesture. The cadets exchanged uneasy looks, but Connor, emboldened by Sarah's encouraging nod, made a command decision. "All right, but just a quick peek." As they entered the galley, the NEO's excitement was palpable. Mark Odessa immediately began examining the equipment. His eyes narrowed in concentration. "Interesting design," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Bet we could improve the energy efficiency by at least 15%, as he started tapping the console. One of the cadets, a young Andorian named Solon, bristled at the comment. "Our systems are state-of-the-art," she said, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "We don't implement changes arbitrarily. All modifications must be approved by engineering." "Of course," Buff interjected to ease the tension. "We have standards and protocols for those kinds of upgrades as well." He turned to Mark. "All the equipment has to be the same across the fleet, like with our miners or ag drones. If we just make upgrades willy-nilly, repairs would be a nightmare with every machine being slightly different." "Sorry, it's just habit." Mark returned. "I'll try not to turn your ship upside down while I'm here." He directed toward the cute Andorian with a smile. "Scout's honor," he said, joking, with a side glance to Lisa. Sarah stepped in smoothly, placing a hand on Connor's shoulder. "I'm sure we can refrain," she said, her tone diplomatic. "Mark just has a knack for optimization. Maybe we can exchange some ideas while we're here?" She smiled at the cadet. Connor, meeting her gaze, suddenly cleared his throat. "Why don't we move on to the science labs? I think you'll find our research facilities quite impressive." As they filed out of the galley, Buff lingered behind for a moment. Connor watched, puzzled as the NEO leader quickly tapped something into a small device before pocketing it and rejoining the group. "Everything all right, Mr. Tony?" Connor asked, trying to strike a balance between friendliness and protocol. Buff grinned, clapping Connor on the shoulder with enough force to make the cadet stumble slightly. "Please, Jimmy boy, it's just Buff. Everything is just fine. Now, about those science labs. Any chance you've got a quantum fluctuation chamber? I've got a few theories I've been dying to test out." As they continued their tour, the contrast between Starfleet's rigid structure and the NEO's freewheeling approach became increasingly apparent. Connor found himself both exhilarated and slightly unnerved by their presence, a sentiment he suspected was shared by much of the crew. The tour concluded at the NEO's assigned quarters, a series of adjacent rooms on Deck 5. Each of the NEOs was paired with a matching gender roommate to encourage more off-duty interaction. As the group dispersed, Connor found himself lingering, his eyes meeting Sarah's. "So," he began, awkwardly shifting his weight, "if you need anything, just use the comm panel. Or, I'm usually in engineering when I'm not on bridge duty." Sarah smiled, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "I might take you up on that, Cadet Connor. I'd love to see how your dilithium matrix compares to our deuterium induction system." As Connor stammered and tried to find the double entendre, the shipwide comm system crackled to life. "All hands, this is the captain. Senior officers and our NEO guests report to the bridge immediately." The easy atmosphere evaporated instantly. Connor straightened, His cadet training kicking in. "We'd better go," he said, gesturing toward the turbolift. The NEOs snapped to and quick-stepped into the lift. Moments later, they emerged onto the bridge. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center, her posture tense as she gazed at the main view screen. The image showed a field of asteroids, dense and chaotic, punctuated by flashes of energy. "What do we got, Captain?" Buff asked, his casual tone at odds with the tense atmosphere. Rodriguez turned, her expression grave. "We've picked up a distress signal originating from within that asteroid field. It's weak and sporadic, but definitely Federation in origin." Commander Torrell stepped forward, her half-Klingon features set in a scowl. "The asteroid field is highly unstable, Captain. Navigating it will be extremely dangerous, even for a ship of Endeavor's capabilities. Not to mention the risk of spatial anomalies," added Ensign Chen from the science station. "Those energy flashes could be anything from ion storms to temporal rifts." Rodriguez nodded, her gaze sweeping over the assembled officers and NEOs. "I'm aware of the risks, but we can't ignore a Federation distress call. Mr. Tony, I understand your people have experience with difficult extractions?" "Buff is fine, really." He exchanged glances with his team before responding. "We've pulled a few people out of tight spots, yeah. But usually with smaller, more maneuverable ships than this beauty." "Then perhaps it's time we combine our expertise," Rodriguez said. "I'm open to suggestions, people. How do we get through that field and reach the source of that signal?" Commander Torrell stepped forward, her voice firm. "Captain, I recommend we launch a series of probes to map a safe trajectory through the asteroid field. Once we have a clear path, we can navigate the Endeavor through carefully." Before Rodriguez could respond, Mark Odessa chimed in. "With all due respect, Commander, that could take hours. If someone's in distress out there, they might not have that kind of time." Sarah Ferenze nodded in agreement. "What if we use the ship's tractor beam to clear a path? We could push the smaller asteroids aside as we move through." Ensign Chen shook her head. "The energy expenditure would be enormous. We'd risk burning out our emitters before we even reach the center of the field." Buff, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly snapped his fingers. "The runabout. It's small enough to maneuver through the tighter spaces, and has articulated thrusters, so we'll have extra maneuverability. It's only got Type 4 phasers, but they should be able to handle anything we run into." Captain Rodriguez considered this for a moment, noting Buff's extensive knowledge of Starfleet vessels. "That could work. We could equip it with additional shielding and sensors to navigate the anomalies." "I volunteer to lead the away team, Captain," Commander Torrell said, stepping forward. Rodriguez nodded. "Agreed. Commander Torrell, you'll take a team in the runabout. I want a mix of Starfleet and NEO personnel." "Mr. Tony, who from your team would you recommend?" Buff grinned. "It's just Buff, please. Sarah's our top pilot, and Mark's got a knack for thinking on his feet in tight spots. They're your best bet." "Very well," Rodriguez said. "Cadet Connor, you and Ensign Deprell will join them. Commander Torrell, you have operational command of the mission. Prepare the runabout and launch when ready." As the team moved to leave the bridge, Sarah caught Connor's eye. The excitement and apprehension were palpable between them. This mission would be more than just a rescue operation. It would be a true test of their ability to work together across cultural divides. Commander Torrell's voice cut through the moment. "Team, meet in Shuttle Bay 2 in 10 minutes. We launch as soon as the runabout is prepped." With a final nod from Captain Rodriguez, the away team filed into the turbolift. As the doors closed, Buff gave Sarah and Mark a reassuring wink. "Show 'em what NEOs can do," he said softly. The turbolift hummed as it carried them towards the shuttle bay, towards an adventure that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. The runabout Nile slipped out of the Endeavor's shuttle bay, its compact form dwarfed by the looming asteroid field ahead. Inside, Commander Torrell sat at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced precision. Sarah Ferenze leaned forward in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and concentration. "Entering the asteroid field now," Toril announced, her voice steady. "Shields at maximum." The runabout lurched as it maneuvered between two massive, slowly tumbling rocks. In the aft section, Mark Odessa and Cadet Connor worked furiously at the sensor array, while Ensign Tuprell monitored the ship's systems. "Commander," Tuprell called out, her Vulcan calm belied by a slight furrow in her brow, "I'm detecting increasing gravimetric distortions ahead." Sarah's hands flew over her console. "I see it. Looks like some kind of spatial anomaly. If we modulate the shield harmonics, we might be able to." "Negative," Toril cut her off. "Starfleet protocol dictates we maintain distance from unknown anomalies." Mark shot Sarah a look, then spoke up. "Commander, with all due respect, sometimes you gotta bend the rules a little. Cutting through that anomaly might be our ticket to finding the source of the distress call." Toril's jaw clenched, but before she could respond, the runabout shuddered violently. A blinding flash of energy washed over the view screen. "Report," Toril barked. "Some kind of quantum filament," Connor said, his voice tense. "It's interfering with our impulse engines. We're losing power." As systems began to flicker and fail around them, Sarah locked eyes with Toril. "Commander, I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Toril hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "Proceed, Miss Still." "Firenze." Sarah's fingers flew across the controls. "If we can't go around the anomaly, we'll go through it. Mark, I need you to reroute all available power to the forward shields. Connor, Tuprell, brace for impact." The runabout surged forward, plunging into the heart of the swirling energy distortion. For a moment, reality itself seemed to bend around them. Then, with a final, bone-jarring shake, they burst through the other side. As the crew caught their breath, a new sight filled the view screen, a battered Federation science vessel adrift amidst the asteroids. "There's our distress call." Mark leaned into the view screen. "An Oberth-class science trawler. I can't believe she hasn't exploded yet." Toril nodded, a newfound respect in her eyes as she glanced at Sarah. "Well done, Miss Firenze. Now, let's see about rescuing that crew." The runabout glided toward the crippled science vessel, its running lights illuminating the scarred hull. As they drew closer, the full extent of the damage became apparent. Deep gashes marred the ship's surface, and debris floated in a silent cloud around it. "Life signs?" Toril asked, her voice taut with tension. Tuprell's fingers danced over her console. "Faint, but present. I'm reading 13 life signs. They're tightly clustered in what appears to be the ship's cargo bay." "The most structurally sound part of an Oberth-class science trawler is the cargo bay," Mark pointed out. "Smart. Those little Oberths are famous for going pop." Everyone glared at him. Under his breath, he just couldn't resist. "I can't believe she hasn't exploded yet." Sarah leaned in, studying the sensor readings. "The interior atmos too unstable for transport. We'll need to dock and evacuate them manually." Toril nodded grimly. "Agreed." Tuprell, "Begin docking procedures." Mr. Odessa prepped the emergency gear. "We don't know what condition we'll find them in." As the runabout maneuvered into position, a sudden burst of static crackled over the comm system. A voice, weak and filled with static, came through. "Anyone, please. They're coming back." The crew exchanged worried glances. "Who's coming back?" Toril demanded, but the transmission had already faded. With a metallic clang, the runabout locked onto the science vessel's airlock. Toril stood, her posture rigid with determination. "Odessa, Firenze, you're with me. Connor, Tuprell, maintain position and be ready for immediate departure." As the airlock cycled open, the away team was hit by a wave of stale, acrid air. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow through the corridors as they made their way toward the cargo bay. Mark took point, his NEO security training evident in his fluid, cautious movements. They found the survivors huddled among crates and equipment, their faces gaunt with fear and exhaustion. A Tellarite scientist stumbled forward, relief etched on his features. "Thank the stars," he rasped. "We thought no one would find us in time." "In time for what?" Sarah asked, helping a young Andorian to her feet. The Tellarite's eyes darted nervously to the viewport. "The raiders. They attacked us, disabled our ship. They'll be back to take us." Taral's hand instinctively went to her phaser. Raiders. Out here." A violent tremor suddenly shook the ship. Mark rushed to a viewport, his face paling at what he saw. "Commander," he called, his voice tight. "We've got company." Toril joined him at the viewport. A sleek, predatory-looking vessel had decloaked nearby, its weapons already powering up. "Everyone, move," Toril barked. Back to the runabout now. As they herded the survivors to the airlock, the science vessel rocked with weapons fire. The raiders had returned, and the rescue mission had just become a fight for survival. In the chaos of the evacuation, Mark caught sight of one of the refugees, a tall, lean woman with piercing eyes, regarding Commander Toril with an unsettling intensity. But there was no time to dwell on it. They had to get everyone to safety before the raiders breached the hull. The race against time had begun, with the lives of the away team and the survivors hanging in the balance. On the little runabout, T'Prel, as cool as a cucumber, called out her shots. Phasers charged, firing, their shields are at 34%. Firing, direct hit, their shields are almost down. Mark's instinct screamed danger as he ushered the last of the refugees into the runabout. His eyes never left the tall woman with the unsettling gaze, even as he helped secure the airlock. Something about her didn't sit right, but there was no time to voice his concerns. "Everyone, strap in," Toril commanded as she rushed to the helm. The runabout shuddered as another volley of weapons fire struck the science vessel. Sarah slid into the co-pilot's seat, her fingers flying over the controls, disengaging docking clamps. "Commander, we're going to have to thread the needle here." Toril nodded grimly. "Do it." The runabout lurched away from the dying science vessel, immediately buffeted by weapons fire from the raider ship. Sarah's piloting skills were put to the test as she wove through the asteroid field, using the massive rocks as cover. The Oberth in the distance spouted plumes of sparks and erupted into a cloud of debris. Its saucer-shaped primary hull, twisting and rolling forward before turning itself inside out and melting into darkness behind them. "Connor, get me the Endeavor." Toril shouted over the chaos. "Channel open, Commander," the cadet responded, his voice steady despite the tension. "Endeavor, this is Commander Toril. We have the survivors, but we're under attack by an unknown vessel. Request immediate assistance." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. "Understood, Commander. We're on our way. Hang on." As the runabout ducked and weaved through the asteroids, Mark kept a watchful eye on the refugees. Most were huddled in fear, clinging to whatever they could as the ship rocked from near misses. But the tall woman remained eerily calm, her eyes never leaving Commander Toril. Suddenly, the woman made her move. In a blur of motion, she produced a small device from within her clothing and raised it toward the commander. Mark reacted instantly, his security training kicking in. "Commander, look out," he shouted, lunging across the cabin. Time seemed to slow. Mark collided with the woman just as she focused the device. He slammed her against the bulkhead, the two tumbling to the floor of the runabout. In the struggle, Mark caught a glimpse of the device. Not a weapon, but some sort of transmitter. With a grunt of effort, he managed to wrench it from her grasp. "T'Prel," he called out, tossing the device to the Vulcan ensign. "Analyze this, quick." T'Prel caught the transmitter in a quick one-handed grab that seemed as simple for her as shooing away a fly, her eyebrow raised in a mix of surprise and approval at Mark's quick thinking. She immediately began scanning the device with her tricorder. "It appears to be a subspace beacon," T'Prel reported, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "Likely used to guide the raiders to our location." She pushed a few buttons on her tricorder. "I'm not sure how to disable the device." T'Prell's eyes narrowed as she glanced down at the restrained woman on the floor. "Who are you, really?" she demanded. Mark looked up at T'Prell. "If you don't mind, Ensign." He reached for the device as T'Prell shifted her weight onto the attacker. Mark smashed the small electronic against the rear bulkhead and turned his attention back to T'Prell. T'Prell again raised an eyebrow, in what seemed to be as close to a smile as the young Vulcan could muster. The runabout rocked violently. Through the view screen they could see the Endeavor emerging from warp, immediately engaging the raider ship. "Hang on," Sarah called out, her hands dancing over the controls. "This might get a little bumpy." As the runabout sped towards the relative safety of the Endeavor, the true nature of their rescue mission, and the dangers they had unwittingly brought aboard, began to unfold. The line between rescue and threat had blurred, and the crew of the Endeavor would soon find themselves caught in a web of deception that stretched far beyond this remote asteroid field. The mess hall hummed with subdued excitement as the NEOHs and a handful of Starfleet cadets gathered around a table, trays of replicated food largely forgotten as they recounted their recent adventure. Sarah leaned forward, gesturing animatedly. "I still can't believe how you handled that quantum filament, Connor. I've never seen anyone think so fast on their feet." Connor's cheeks flushed slightly at the praise. "It was a team effort. Your piloting skills were incredible. How did you learn to fly like that?" "Trial and error, mostly," Sarah shrugged. "When you're exploring uncharted space, you learn to improvise or you don't come back. Besides, your runabouts are really nimble." T'Prell raised an eyebrow. "Fascinating. Starfleet training emphasizes thorough preparation and protocol. Your methods seem highly unconventional." Mark chuckled. "That's one way of putting it. But sometimes unconventional is exactly what you need. Take that transmitter the prisoner had. Standard procedure would have been to confiscate and contain it, right?" "Correct," T'Prell nodded. "Your decision to analyze it immediately was logical, given the circumstances." "High praise from a Vulcan," Connor grinned, nudging Mark. The conversation flowed freely, barriers of formality breaking down as they shared stories and compared notes on their different approaches to space exploration. "So, what's it like?" Lisa asked, looking around at the Starfleet officers. "Being part of such a huge organization, I mean. Don't you ever feel constrained?" Ensign Chen, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "It's not about constraint. It's about being part of something bigger than yourself, knowing that you're contributing to a grand mission of exploration and diplomacy." "I can respect that," Buff nodded. "But there's something to be said for the freedom to chart your own course, make your own decisions, even if those decisions sometimes lead to trouble," Connor asked, a teasing glint in his eye. Sarah laughed. "Especially then. That's how you learn, grow, become better." Zalin, changing the subject. "We've all heard rumors about what it's like on Morning and other NEO encampments. What is day-to-day life like?" Her antennae moving about quizzically. Mark, who had been eyeing her beautiful blue hue since he first saw her, quickly piped up. "It depends. If you're in service, it's all business. But when we have time off and get to go home for a bit, it's very relaxed. How's that work?" She looked around. "What's in service?" "We have the knowledge, information that we awaken with. We use the knowledge to provide our 5 years of service in most cases. Some specialty vocations require up to 8 years of service. From the time you awaken," she nodded. "Yes, once service is complete, we can choose to stay within that profession and continue service, or work that job out of service, sort of like a civilian. We also have the option of changing disciplines at that point as well. You can work in any profession, but while you're learning your new vocation in a classroom setting, you are also required to teach your knowledge to other NEOs who are also changing fields." "That would be interesting," interjected Ensign Chen. "So, I would have the option, after serving a period of time in the sciences, to switch to, say, security, just because I wanted to." Right, as long as you help others bring their science skills up to your level, so they can in turn serve in a similar capacity as you have. Does that make sense? Leaning into Thazalan's personal space. As the night wore on, the group began to disperse, trailing off to their quarters or other destinations. Zalan approached Mark Odessa. "Can we sit?" gesturing to an out-of-the-way corner in the quickly emptying mess hall. Odessa complied willingly. "Mark, I couldn't help but notice your face changes hues of pink slightly when we're close." "Do you like Andorian women?" she said so flatly. Mark wasn't sure if she was serious. Somewhat stunned, Mark did his best. "I guess I hadn't thought about it. We don't meet many non-humans, and I guess you're, So you have thought about it," she said with a teasing smile. "I have an Andorian treat I'd like to share with you, if you're up to it. It's ale made on my home planet. Most humans tolerate it pretty well." She jumped up from the table. "Come on. I have a feeling my quarters are empty." Mark, shaking off his loss for words, I don't know if I like Andorian women. Zalan." He touched her shoulder and they both stopped. "I only know that I like you." Sarah, the Zalan's roommate, lingered in the corridor waiting to catch James. "You know, if you ever want to learn some unconventional flying techniques, I'd be happy to show you a thing or two." James's smile was warm. "I'd like that. And maybe I could teach you a few Starfleet tricks in return." Sarah's eyes whirled with delight. They continued walking away, down the corridor, conversation fading. Meanwhile, in the captain's ready room, Buff stood before Captain Rodriguez, his usual casual demeanor tempered by a hint of formality. "Captain, I want to thank you for this opportunity," Buff said, his voice sincere. "I think we've all gained a lot working with your crew." Rodriguez nodded, a small smile on her lips. "Indeed we have, Mr. Tony. Your team really came through on the rescue mission. Toril rarely has praise for cadets, or even officers for that matter. She had nothing but good things to say about your team. Please, Buff is fine." Buff reached into his pocket, pulling out a pad. "Which brings me to this. It's the schematics for our emergency suit transporter system. It's a new technology that has already saved lives on some of our mining asteroids." Rodriguez's eyes widened as she took the pad. "This is quite generous, Mr. Tony." "Buff," she said, correcting herself. "Are you sure about this? Please consider it a gesture of goodwill. I developed this tech after losing." Buff tilted his head. "Good people when I was deployed on a mining operation." Deep lines could be seen on his young face. "I spoke with Nolan before coming. I asked if it was appropriate, and if he was okay with it, to share this with Starfleet, especially with you." Embarrassed that his eyes still welled up when he thought of his lost colleagues, his dear friends, he moved to the window and looked out so she wouldn't see. "Perhaps we can consider it a down payment on future cooperation." As Rodriguez examined the pad, "You know, Captain, I used to think Starfleet was all rules and regulations. But after today, I can see there's much more to it than that. And I'm beginning to appreciate the value of your more flexible approach," Rodriguez replied, joining him at the window. "Perhaps there's a middle ground we can find, a way to combine the best of both our methods." Buff grinned. "Now that sounds like something I'd really like to work on, Amelia." Resting his left hand naturally on her left hip, raising an eyebrow and shifting his eyes to the captain, she quickly removed his hand, leaning slightly away and glaring at him. Buff just gazed out the window as if nothing had happened. They stood there, looking out into the vastness of space. Both felt a sense of profound possibility, though the possibilities in Buff's mind may have been a bit different than the captain's. The cultural exchange had been more successful than either had dared hope, and the future, with all its unknowns, seemed just a little lighter, a little softer. Buff knew Nolan would be pleased. The Endeavor warped away, carrying with it the seeds of a new understanding between Starfleet and the NEOHs, and the promise of adventures yet to come. Epilogue. The runabout hung silently in space, its exterior betraying nothing of the activities within. Inside, the small craft told a different story. Clothes were strewn haphazardly over consoles and chairs, partially floating, illuminated by the soft glow of instrument panels. The air was filled with muffled giggles and whispers. Sarah's playful voice rang out in the confined space. "I thought you said you wanted to learn some unconventional flying techniques." James' laughter followed, warm and genuine. "I'd say this qualifies as pretty unconventional." More laughter erupted as a boot drifted lazily past, spinning slowly in the zero-gravity environment. "Oops," Sarah exclaimed, a hint of mischief in her tone. "I guess we forgot about the artificial gravity." "Good thing, too," James replied, his voice dropping to a suggestive murmur. "Zerog adds a whole new dimension to flight training." Their giggles mingled in the air, punctuated by playful shushing. The runabout continued its silent, secret mission, a small sanctuary of joy and newfound intimacy amid the vast expanse of space. As the stars wheeled slowly outside the viewport, Sarah and James lost themselves in their own private universe, where Starfleet protocols and neo-pragmatism melted away, leaving only the pulse of two hearts finding one another. Or, well, other epilogue. Captain Rodriguez tosses and turns in her bed, unable to settle. Finally, she sits up and swings her legs out of the bed and grabs her blue satin robe as she gets up and walks to the other end of her quarters. The robe open and loosely draped from her shoulders, water cold. She says into the replicator, "No, milk, warm." She corrected, but it was too late, so she took a long drink of her water. She sets down the empty glass with a clack and wraps the robe tightly around her. She ties the belt and yanks it tight, with resolve on her face. She taps the comm on the wall. "Buffalo Tony," she says with frustration. Buff's portable comm flashes on with a hum and dimly illuminates the room. Buff grabs it while sitting up. He taps the comm and breathes deeply. Yeah, this is Buff. His eyes just beginning to open as he finished. Buff's shirtless physique appeared on Amelia's screen. He was thin yet very muscular and seemed to be lacking any body fat at all. She shook it off. "Buff, why did you think it was appropriate to put your arm around me and your hand on my hip earlier in my ready room?" "Appropriate? I hadn't really considered that, obviously." His boyish smile as he looked down. "When you walked past me and stood beside me, your scent just kind of washed over me, I could feel your warmth standing so close. I thought about your hips." He looked into her eyes. "You were all flexible approach and combining the best of. But how could a man not want you under those circumstances?" Captain Rodriguez takes a deep breath, her expression a mix of exasperation and a hint of amusement she's trying to suppress. She speaks firmly but not unkindly. "Mr. Tony, Buff, I appreciate your honesty, but there are boundaries that need to be respected, especially in a professional setting. As the captain of this ship, it's my duty to maintain a certain decorum. Your actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, were inappropriate, given our respective positions." She pauses, then continues with a softer tone. "I understand that Neo culture may have different norms, but while you're aboard the Endeavor, I need you to be mindful of Starfleet protocols. This exchange program is about learning from each other, and that includes understanding and respecting our differences." Rodriguez allows a small smile. "Now, get some rest. We have a lot to discuss about cultural expectations in tomorrow's debriefing."